Today is the second day of the first online conference on energy, COVID, and climate change, organized by the International Association for Energy Economics. And we just heard a very interesting session on the circular carbon economy, and we have a great pleasure to have with us Noura Mansouri, who moderated the session, and Adam Sieminski. So welcome and thank you for agreeing to join the interview. So during the session, we discussed the topic of the circular carbon economy. And could you please start with explaining what the concept is about?
Noura, would you like to take the first try at that?
Please go ahead, Adam.
Oh, well, the circular carbon economy is a holistic approach that uses all of the available levers, all of the tools in the toolbox to try to address emissions, and especially CO2 emissions that everybody agrees are critical to manage to deal with the rising temperatures in climate change. In years past, we talked about a linear economy. It was basically a use and dispose economy. And then people began to talk about the circular economy. And the circular economy includes the ideas of reducing, reusing, and recycling, but it often deals with material flows. So objects in the economy and how we can use less ore, for example, for metals and recycle and reusing metals in the economy. Now that we're concerned about climate and carbon dioxide and other greenhouse gases, the concept of the circular carbon economy is to add a fourth R, remove, to the 3 R's of the circular economy. And remove includes things like direct air capture of carbon dioxide, which could be critically important if we're going to actually get carbon dioxide out of the atmosphere that's there now. Another way to deal and manage carbon dioxide is with geologic storage, or even nature-based solutions. And we just had a great presentation by Dr. Carlos Duarte from KAUST, the King Abdullah University for Science and Technology. And what he was saying is the oceans offer a great opportunity for reducing carbon dioxide through the animals themselves in the ocean, through seaweed in the ocean, through mangroves on the coasts, coastlines, and through forestation on land. And what, let's come back to your question, Maria. What is the circular carbon economy? It's a very simple concept. It says all of the ways of dealing with greenhouse gases are important, that any one solution is likely insufficient, that the old way of just looking at reduce is critically important, but necessary, but alone is not going to fix the problem that we have. Back to you.
Mm-hmm. Okay, excellent. Thank you very much. And maybe question to Noura, because she was involved in the developments within the G20. It was actually the forum that was crucial in terms of fostering the concept of circular carbon economy. And could you please explain to us what would be the next steps in terms of the implementation and how G20 could help to put this concept into practice?
Yeah, thank you, Maria. So the G20 represent almost 90% of the global GDP and around 2/3 of the world population. They are also the world's largest producers and consumers of energy, which is predominantly hydrocarbons based. So G20 nations can play a significant role in mitigating and limiting global warming to acceptable temperature thresholds. Advancements of climate action at all levels, as well as coordinated G20 efforts, are critical to pursue this goal and ensure sustainable and climate resilient post-pandemic economic recovery in G20 countries. The circular carbon economy was proposed by the Saudi G20 presidency last year, and it was endorsed by all the G20 countries as a holistic, integrated, inclusive, and pragmatic approach to managing emissions based on the 4 Rs, which Adam explained. So the G20 is an important platform, especially on the onset of COVID-19 and the cancellation of many global events, including last year's COP26 and COP for climate and COP15 for biodiversity. So the G20 really filled the gap in effective multilateralism. And it's continuing to do so as the world eases and opens up after COVID-19 pandemic. And this year's T20, which I'm involved with as a co-chair of the Task Force 2 on Sustainable Energy, Climate Change and Environment, circular carbon economy is retained as one of the priority topics seen as an important topic to tackle global climate change and environmental challenges. So hopefully through the policy briefs that are being currently drafted by authors from all over the world, the circular carbon economy will be part of the agenda, and hopefully it's advancing and being applied to different contexts and different countries for a shift towards sustainability, circularity, and neutrality.
Excellent, thank you very much. And maybe a question to Adam regarding what are the 3 main takeaways from the session?
Maria, thank you for that question. I would say that the 3 key takeaways are that there's more than one way to address climate change problems, and that looking at a single scenario approach is probably not going to give you the lowest cost solution, or one that has the greatest chance of actually being accepted by policymakers and citizens around the world. There are 4 key areas, I think, that need to be explored. One is methane abatement policies, which really is part of the circular carbon economy idea, but is not carbon dioxide. It's really kind of an interesting way of thinking about it. A lot of the methane comes from energy production. A second way is the circular carbon economy approach itself. A third thing to be considered is hydrogen, and I think that we should probably talk a little bit about the opportunities for hydrogen. You mentioned that earlier in our discussion. And it's a favored approach, I think, among many of the European countries and Japan. The fourth thing, I believe, and it's really important, and this came out in our meeting, is a number of countries are highly dependent on production of hydrocarbons for their economies, and we need to find a way to bring resource-rich countries into the process of solving the problem, rather than thinking of carbon as the enemy. We need to think of ways to encourage hydrocarbon producing countries and companies to help solve the problem.
Excellent. And speaking of hydrogen, because this is actually the topic that is widely discussed in the European right now, and European Commission already, and together with the member state, agreed to put a substantial amount of funding into the development of hydrogen economy. And where are the developments that you would suggest us to follow regarding the implementation of hydrogen economy? Where do you see the biggest change coming from? Is it mostly like the policies, or maybe COP26, or maybe from the market side? So where do you think like the hydrogen economy will come from?
Noura, go ahead.
Okay. So thank you for the question, Maria. So hydrogen was one of the topics that was discussed during the panel today. Hydrogen is seen as the cross-cutting technology that crosses through the 4 Rs of CCE: reduce, reuse, recycle, and remove. Hydrogen can play a major role in connecting the different energy systems. It can be a viable energy vector. In power, it can complement renewables, for instance. In the residential sector, it can offer options for heating and cooking. In the industry, it can help decarbonize the hard-to-abate sectors. And in the transport sector, it can complement the battery electric vehicles, for instance. So there are many different uses where hydrogen can play. But hydrogen will also require a new value, a new infrastructure and business model in the value chain. In the feedstock, by electricity and heat from renewables, and reforming or gasification of fossil fuels, in the production through liquefaction, hydrogenation, and in the transport using liquid hydrogen and other forms of hydrogen, and in the extraction, including regasification and dehydrogenation, and the different applications such as fuel cells, feedstock, power generation, direct combustion, and ammonia furnaces. So hydrogen, which can be used from different sources, and these represent the different colors of hydrogen: brown, gray, blue, and green. There are significant price gaps, and we really need here the policy and investments to reduce the gap between green hydrogen and blue hydrogen and other types of hydrogen.
Let me just add to Noura's excellent overview that in Saudi Arabia, green hydrogen is being pursued in a $5 billion project at Neom, the new city in the northwest part of Saudi Arabia, with aqua power and air products. And that will be available for consumers who would like to have green hydrogen. Aramco, Saudi Aramco, the oil company, is also pursuing blue hydrogen and blue ammonia, and has actually made a shipment to Japan of blue ammonia to test the operational and financial aspects of doing that. So hydrogen, as Noura said, could play a very important role in the circular carbon economy. And Saudi Arabia is looking at both of these new opportunities as a way of providing cleaner fuels, but doing so on the one case with solar and wind, and in the other case using natural gas. It again is part of this idea of using all of the tools in the toolbox to address the problem.
Okay, but when do you expect, or is it possible in the future that, for instance, the companies such as Aramco will sell more hydrogen than oil?
I think this actually is another question that came up. You know, what's the timing of doing all this? I think a lot is going to depend on how quickly the costs can come down. People were very surprised over the past 10 years at how rapidly solar panel costs and wind turbine costs came down. And I think that we need pilot projects, demonstration projects, and both commercial and government directed efforts to drive the cost of these new technologies down, including green and blue hydrogen. And the answer, I think, is really not known. But the faster we move on demonstration and pilot projects, the more likely it is that we get the costs down to the point where each of these options and many others become affordable to the average consumer.
Okay, perfect. Thank you very much, Noura. Adam, it was a great pleasure.